Hey Gear Seekers, we're checking out a brand new case today, another one from Antec in their Flux series. We actually had a look at the I think it's the DF600 a little while ago. This time we're checking out the DP502 Flux. It's based on the same chassis, but let's see what actually makes this case different apart from the front panel. Let's get into it. As usual with these builds and reviews on the channel, we use parts that we have on hand that go into these systems, and when we're done with them, we put them back into our inventory to get them ready for other builds and other projects later down the line. But let's take a closer look at the DP502 and see what makes this case tick. All right, let's start off by pulling off the side panels. These use captive thumb screws, which are nice, which means basically when you unscrew it, you don't lose the thumb screws. The glass is not tinted. I thought I'd mention that right at the start because people always ask if the glass is tinted on these cases. It's got a little latch mechanism. It's exactly the same as the DF600 that we checked out a little while ago. So basically the deal is, this is a platform that Antec's put together so they can build an array of different cases using the same platform. I don't have a problem with that. This is quite common with companies like Cooler Master and Thermaltake, and basically all case vendors do this. Like the DF600, it's got vents on the power supply section, basically because you can use this as intake. It has reverse rotation fans that will allow you to use the basement as intake. There's a lot of space, and we're gonna talk about this as well. If you've seen our DF600 coverage, you'd probably notice that this is very similar. Basically, it's identical. It's got a built-in ARGB controller with motherboard pass-through. 4 of the ARGB channels are actually taken up by the included fans in the front, which we're gonna get to, and a little RGB strip on the front that kind of is reminiscent of their Katana RAM, which I think is a nice little tie-in. It's also got a DC power hub for the fans, not PWM. I would like to see this have PWM. It would make it a bit more attractive, but again, this is a budget case, so you're not gonna get that on this instance. There's a cable management raceway here. It's not really a raceway, it's just a bunch of Velcro that lines everything up, which makes it nice to cable manage. It is nice that this Velcro is included. As for power supply support, if you remove this hard drive sled in the bottom and the cage that holds the hard drive sled, you can actually put any size power supply you like in here, which is quite nice. I would probably recommend 160, 170 mil as the max, probably more towards the 160 side. As far as the accessory box, it's got an accessory box with basically everything that you need inside it. It's contained in one of the hard drive sleds. You can mount another hard drive to the top of the cage as well, but that's completely optional and up to you. In terms of hard drive mounting options, like I said previously, we've got this hard drive sled in the basement. You can mount another drive to the top, and you've got 2 SSD for 2.5-inch SSDs on the back of these 2 little sleds. These just pop out like so, pop back in with a little bit of force. Other than the other SSD mounts I showed a little bit earlier, there's 2 additional SSD mounts. There's one here and one here as well. In total, you can do about 6 hard drives, and there's also optical drive mounting at the top, which can be removed to install a 360mm rad up the top, which we're going to be doing in this video. In terms of front panel connectivity and wiring, you've got the hard disk light, you've got the power light and the power switch. There is an audio connector as well for the front panel audio, and USB 3.0. Circling back to the built-in fan and RGB controller, it's powered by SATA or SATA power. It's got a 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB pass-through for your motherboard, and that 3-pin gigabyte connector that was only implemented for like Z370, I think, and actually a PWM fan connector as well for controlling the fan speed, which is actually quite interesting. In total, there's 5 included fans. There's one on the rear. There's one that comes in this box. Now this actually has, like the DF600, it's got reverse pitch blades. So when you mount it this way, it actually exhausts air out the top of the fan, exactly like the other case that we covered recently. Other than that, there's actually a bunch of addressable RGB fans built into the front of the case as well, which we'll take a bit of a closer look at when we pull the front of the case apart. In terms of additional fan mounting options, you can actually mount this reverse pitch fan to the bottom, or any other fans. You just put them on in exhaust on the bottom here, and there's 3 120mm fans that can go along the top of the case as well. So actually pretty impressive. The thing that I like about this case, and I will say this, like the DF600, It's a very cheap case with 5 fans included, and for it to be the price that it is, which we'll talk about a little bit later on in the video, it's actually pretty good value. In terms of motherboard support in this case, you can go from ITX all the way up to ATX. You can't do eATX. There is a lip along this edge here that'll foul on the motherboard, so probably not recommended. If the standoffs are longer, you could probably get away with it, but you can't in this case. There's also holes here for cable pass-through, which I don't have a problem with them not having grommets, considering this is quite a budget case, and it's kind of hard to put grommets in a case where it has this lip as well. Ultimately, with grommets, there's a lot of discussion about it. I personally don't care if they don't have them, but it would have been nice for them to do it. But with the design of this case, it's actually not technically possible to make them work. While we're talking about clearances and that kind of stuff, the maximum GPU length that you're looking is about 420 millimeters. And from memory, I think air cooler height is 166 millimeters. I could be wrong, I can't remember that, but I think that's what it was from the DF600 because these cases are basically exactly the same. So if you want to see what we said about that case, there's a link in the top right-hand corner right now. I've left the plastic on the front panel for this part of the video, but basically it's kind of reminiscent of cases from, let's say, 2010. It's got a little flap to hide the optical drive bay, which is okay. I wish that they actually made it easily removable, which you can remove. It's got this faux metal finish. It's actually just plastic. I'm not going to peel this just yet. I'll wait till a little bit later on in the video. There's also these little silver strips you can probably see, which are reminiscent of the Antec Katana RAM, which I think is a nice little touch. And obviously, because this is like an Antec case, we're going to use the Katana RAM because it will suit and it will look nice. And yeah, so there is intake. Pulling the front panel off reveals these 3 included RGB fans, which we're gonna leave in the case. We're not gonna change these out. And they've got that addressable RGB ring around the edge of them. There's little rubber feet on them as well for cushioning, so it reduces vibration. And yeah, it's pretty standard for Antec to include front RGB fans. As I mentioned previously, there's some optical drive mounting stuff, but what we're gonna do is I'm gonna remove this, and I'm gonna remove this because for when we build in it, I'm not gonna use it. So it's only 2 screws. So you just remove the 2 screws, just like 1 screw, 2 screw, remove the brackety-do, and it's just this little metal tab. So if you wanna use a 360mm rad in the top, you will need to remove this bracket. In terms of dust filters, there's 3 in total. There's a magnetic filter on the top of the case. There is a little filter for the power supply which slides out from the bottom on some rails. And there's this filter. This filter here can be mounted either on the inside of the side panel for dust filtration if you're using intake in the basement, which is the recommended way that I would probably use this, which is the way I'm probably going to use it in this video. And the other way is you can use the filter on this inside panel here for these fans. On the DF600, the filter is traditionally installed this way on that case, but for this case, I probably would recommend not doing that just so you get some better airflow, considering the top of this case is restricted by this flap. But I suspect, and I'm not gonna go out on a limb here just yet until we test it, which will come later in the video, that this may not affect it as much as you think. In terms of front panel connectivity, or rather top panel in this case, you got a power button, you've got LED button to control the RGB controller, hard disk and power light. You've got these little grommets that cover over all of the ports, which is nice for people get dust in their ports sometimes if they're not careful and they don't look after their system. So this is just a nice little addition. You can pull out these little rubber grommets. Yes, there's some rubber grommets on this case. So in terms of ports, there's a USB port, there's a microphone jack, a headphone jack, and another USB port. Okay, ladies and gents, enough talking about the DP502 Flux. It's time to build. Let's jump right in. ladies and gents, you guys asked for it. We haven't done this in a while. It's time to visit our friends over at Corp. Let's see what they've been up to. Maybe they've been friends with the people who commented on yesterday's video, Claire. A lot of Corp employees. Ooh, okay, here we go. Corps ahoy. There's a link to the Corp merch on screen right now as well. Ooh, this one's sounding pretty good. Ooh. Oh, look, listen to that edge. Ooh. All right, ladies and gents. It's time to engage cinematic mode. Kids, don't do this at home. Seriously, don't do this at home. Alrighty, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed this build in the Antec DP502 Flux. Let's do what we usually do and quickly take a look at the thermals of this case. What you're seeing on screen right now is that the thermals aren't horrible, they're not amazing, but they're decent enough for a case that costs only $75 US with 5 included fans, so it's not too bad. What I did test as well, and I didn't think this was even worth mentioning with a separate graph, was the temperature difference with both the front flap, or the front door being open and closed. The difference was around about ½ degree and peaking at around about 1 degree. So ultimately, even with parts like this, it didn't make much of a difference. That being said, let's quickly chat about those parts. The CPU is the AMD Ryzen 9 5950X. We put the 5950X on the ROG Crosshair 8 Dark Hero. To cool that 5950X, we use the EK-AIO Elite 360 DRGB. It's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? The RAM is 32 gigs, yes, 32 gigs of Antec Katana RAM. People always think that it's only 16 when I put 16 gigs in the PC part picker list because it's two 16 gig kits. So yeah, that equals 32. For storage, we went with the Samsung 980 Pro, 1 terabyte. And the GPU is the Asus ROG Strix RTX 3090. Claire, can I just say something to you before we go on with the video? This computer sounds to me like the out of stock edition. I feel bad, but these are the parts that I wanted to use. And the reason why I picked these parts particularly are they look pretty good, and also they get really hot, so they're actually a good measure. Usually when we do Antec cases, I found lately that we've been using lower tier hardware, and this time I was like, you know what, we're gonna go all out and put the duck's nuts hardware in there. That's an Australian saying. I don't know, is that a saying anywhere else in the world?
Probably.
Duck's nuts, but yeah, we put the duck's nuts or the bee's knees or whatever people want to call it. We also added a bunch of VADA SD RGB fans from EK as well. The reason why I use them is because I just like the way they look, and the little hub that comes with the new AIO is really cool. And what we actually did is we bridged the Antec hub into the EK hub, and then the EK hub went into the motherboard, and the lighting effect is just one of the default ones in AuraSync, and it's kind of like this tropical rainbow effect, and I like it. I think we used it on the last Flux case, and I was like, you know what, we did that last time, I'm gonna do it again, and I just dig how this looks in general. And lastly, obviously the case is the Antec DP502 Flux. But let's chat about this case and a few things that I noticed about this case. First of all, the aesthetics. I know some people it's not gonna be their cup of tea, but to be honest, I really like it. I think it looks really cool, especially with those little silver strips on the front that kind of echo that design and styling from the RAM. I really like that. That actually looks really nice. The thermal performance is actually not too bad. Actually, the GPU's thermal performance was so much better when I tested with and without the bottom fans too. Honestly, it made a massive difference. So if you are going to be building in this case, I would suggest putting fans underneath your GPU if, only if, you're going to be using a GPU that gets as hot as this thing. But not everything's perfect with this case. I did run into one issue, but I made it work. Yes, you can fit a 360mm rad at the top. However, not all 360mm rads are created equally. The end tank on this side, on the rear fan side, is bigger than most other AIOs, and it was a little bit tricky to fit in because there's rivets in the top of the case that aren't fully grinded down, so it made it a little bit difficult to get it in, but I ended up getting in, and I probably scratched the living heck out of the end tank on the AIO, but it does fit. I did test another AIO, one of the NZXT ones, and it fit no problem. But yeah, just letting you know that this EK one is a little bit tight, but you can make it fit without any problems. And just while I'm on the topic of this AIO, I know people are gonna be like, oh, the tubes look weird on this AIO because like they're bent funny. You can't actually bend them any other way. And the way that they actually come off the pump top is like that. And even if you flip the pump over on itself or any other direction, or flip the center of the pump through the pipes to change the way that the connectors come off the side of the pump top, yeah, they don't sit right. So this is the only way I could make it sit, and the tubes are very, very short. So even if I was to flip the pump top over to have it upside down, which wouldn't actually impact performance at all, they aren't long enough to reach the front. And I did try doing it the other way as well, and it just didn't feel right, mainly because the pipes were fouling with the rear fan, and I would suggest using an exhaust fan with this case. So yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about here. As far as cable management, it's the same as the DF600, basically what I said with that. There's lots of tie down points along the edge of the opening on the rear of the motherboard tray. So if you use tweezers or zip ties, it's pretty easy to cable manage. I kind of rushed my cable management job through this because we've just had a busy day. But if I spent more time with it, it would have been a lot cleaner, but it is actually not too bad. So yeah, just take that into account. Take your time with cable managing in this case, because it is actually quite easy to cable management when you've got time. I never have enough time to do anything anymore. So what's my verdict on this case? Well, I really like it. It's weird, yes, I know, it looks weird, but the aesthetic, I don't know, there's just something about it. Those fans at the front, they just look awesome. Those little silver strips on the front, I just like it. I don't know what it is. I think I've just got a soft spot for cases with these kind of grills on the front. It's kind of like when we did the Deepcool CL500, the same thing. I just like them. I don't know, there's just something about it. And having that door on the front as well, and although it only impacts performance a slight bit from what we noticed, other people are gonna say different things. I don't care. I like the door. It just, I don't know, it just adds to the aesthetic. I don't know. I just like it. I'm saying I don't know a lot, but the truth is I do know. I like it. I'm allowed to like different things. Another recommendation I'm gonna make, and it's gonna fill your case up with dust if you decide to do it this way, don't use the front filter. It impacted the cooling performance quite a bit. And yeah, if you want this case to flow really nicely, pull that front filter out and don't use it. That's just my recommendation. I know it's there for a reason to keep the dust out, but if you're looking at this case for a more performance focused system, definitely pull out that front mesh filter. Why am I talking slowly? But anyways guys, if you're interested in grabbing one of these new Antec DP502 Fluxes, the price is actually not too bad as well. And considering you get 5 fans, they're going for 75 US dollars, around 115 Aussie dollars at the time of filming this video, subject to availability. Claire, I feel like we need to start adding that into everything when I mention a price of anything, because this year's been a nightmare for actually getting parts. So yeah, pandemic, people have forgotten already. Anyways, guys, if you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. It's available over on our Patreon. If you want to get early access to some of our videos, we are on Floatplane. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy Nick. That didn't say, hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick in the intro. There's a PC part picker list down below. You peek, we seek. Thanks for watching. I really cocked that up at the end, didn't I, Claire?
Just a little.
Yeah. Anyways, I'm out. It's the purity of the situation, Claire. The purity. The purity. The purity. I can't believe people got upset with them putting an LS3 in an E30. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah.